5 years ago, I was standing in the freezing cold Canadian winters in -degree temperatures, working as a valet for $50 a shift, plus any sort of other tip for 6 to 8 hour long shifts. And I was barely in a position where I was able to pay tuition, pay other bills, and actually live my life. I would come home after working these events like wedding venues, after parties, and I always felt so exhausted because it would be 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning even at some points. And I felt like I was just going in a constant loop, doing the same thing day in and day out. It was the same shit, different day. And I saw other people progressing in their life. Although it might not have been the exact route that I wanted to take, I just saw people doing other things. And I always felt like I was staying stuck in one particular position. And I was in this position where I never felt like I was actually able to get my head above water. I felt like I was drowning to a certain extent, and it was never enough. You know, I paid off this bill. Oh wait, but then I have that other bill. Oh wait, I have to not do this because I have to pay this specific thing. I was in this constant cycle of I can't afford it, or I couldn't do this, or I couldn't do that because I didn't have the time to do so, because it would take away from the money that I could potentially be able to make. Now, fast forward to today, everything is completely 180 degrees. It's a completely different situation. But getting here almost didn't happen. And this video isn't going to be some sort of fancy highlight reel with all these amazing edits and whatnot. It's just going to show you the raw story, the authentic backstory of what I've gone through, how I've gotten to this position that I'm in right now, and how I almost quit numerous different times, and the struggles that I've had to go through to get to this position. Because truth be told, contrary to what you might see a lot of times on online, it wasn't always sunshines and rainbows. So I'm going to explain to you the things that I wasted tens of thousands of dollars on, the things that costed me a lot of money, that costed me a lot of time, but the exact turning point I had in regards to when everything just simply changed. So all my life, I grew up in a very regular household. You know, I had parents that loved me. I had parents that took care of me. I was always well supported in any venture that I wanted to be able to do. I got to the point where, you know, I was a semi-professional golfer as a junior as well, and I was following along the regular path. You know, I went to school. Once I went to school, of course, I'm in Canada, so I went to high school, I went to college, and then I ended up going to university. And when I got to university, I pursued many different avenues in the beginning. I first initially wanted to have a bachelor's in economics, and then I decided I wanted to become a finance bro. So then I decided I want to pursue my bachelor's in finance. And then I wanted to have a minor in marketing. So I kind of bounced around a lot of the times. And in 2021, I was nearing getting to a position where I could complete my degree in a bachelor's in university and finally start my life, I guess you can say. But as I was doing that, I also worked many different jobs. I worked as a brand ambassador for a protein company. And what I was doing primarily to sustain myself was working as a valet driver. Now, for any of you that might see from a glance, right, working as a valet driver, it's cool, to be honest. You know, when you're 20 years old, when you're 21 years old, you're having an awesome time. You're driving these nice fancy cars. You get to, you know, fool around with your friends. Like, it was a very easygoing job. And now the problem with that is I would work these nights because I knew I had things to pay. I had tuition to pay. But then the worst situation was working those nights and realizing, oh, it's Sunday at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then tomorrow I have to go to class at 9 o'clock in the morning. So there was always this constant loop of like, I did like to work as a valet, but the problem was, well, then I had to also do my homework. Then I had to prepare for exams and all these different types of things. And I know it was a very simple thing at the end of the day, but it initiated this innate feeling that I had of like, what am I actually doing and who am I doing this for, right? Am I doing this because this is what I wanted to do? Or am I doing this because this is what other people expect me to do and expect me to live my life? And especially working as a valet in Canada, you know, when you're working in the depths of December to March, like you're talking about -10, -15 degree weathers that you're required to stay outside in and actually work and drive people's cars and deliver those cars. And working those nights, you really start to contemplate a lot of different types of things. And I thought to myself, like, okay, like what if I stopped working as a valet and I actually did get a good job? Because at that point I had maybe about 2 semesters left. So a little bit under a year I had to complete my bachelor's degree. And I recognized, well, it would be kind of like the same thing because I would be working Monday through Friday. I'd be living for the weekend. I realized like none of this was temporary, how I was feeling. it would actually be a lifelong thing if I were to sustain the path that I was going on. So as 2021 started to come to a wrap, that's when the whole world turned upside down and there was this big global pandemic. Now, that obviously shut down a lot of things. So working as a valet, working these public events, that no longer existed. So I lost my valet job. So now I was in a position where I was in a tight squeeze because you got bills to pay, you have no income, you're in a time and period that nobody's ever experienced before in the world, and a lot of people are not hiring at the current moment. So I'm trying to figure out like, well, what do I do here? And what ended up happening is I felt this sense of helplessness because like it was in the hands of other people. My money, my livelihood, the things that I wanted to do were in the hands of other individuals. It was in their control because the government was the one that shut down all the specific jobs, and I lost my job as a valet and my boss ended up firing me. So this created like a lot of pressure in my head. And then I started to realize like as I was going through university, that also went all online. I was paying the same tuition bills as a university student, but I was just getting all recycled material from the university from like 2008 to 2007, so super old videos. I lost faith in the schooling system, but most importantly, I started to gain a clearer vision in regards to what I wanted my life to actually be like. And it wasn't going to school, getting a job, working for 40 to 50 years, and then only starting to live my life when I was at the age of 60. So as I started to go through that whole entire mental process, I needed to make something happen for myself. Now, yes, of course, like I was still living with my parents at that time. I was in a position where I was living with my parents. My bedroom was also my study room, was also my living room, I guess you can say, and all that stuff. And I was grateful for that, but I still had certain things I needed to pay for. And what ended up happening is as I started to look into other avenues, right? How to make money online was essentially what I actually typed in, because online was the only way that people can make money throughout the time of the pandemic. No in-person jobs were actually hiring at that moment. And I started scrounging, affiliate marketing, YouTube automations, a bunch of different pyramid schemes or multi-level marketing schemes and whatnot. And as I went through it, I had this kind of moment of realization in regards to, well, wait, the one thing during the pandemic that didn't close was Amazon. It had its record-breaking year as the pandemic did indeed hit. And I found that quite interesting because I recognized like, well, everything else in the world basically to a certain extent was shut down. But this one thing, this one beast, behemoth of a company was producing more than anything else throughout that time of the year. So I recognized, and I looked a little bit deeper into it. Now, as I looked into it, I got down the rabbit hole of Amazon FBA and what that looked like. And I didn't want it to be in this position where I needed to spend thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars up front, because with Amazon FBA, you need to buy products in bulk. So I didn't like that avenue. I like the aspect of working as an Amazon seller, but not just doing Amazon FBA. So that's when I stumbled across Amazon Dropshipping. Now, as I stumbled across Amazon Dropshipping, it's very interesting because I shared my whole entire journey on social media, on Instagram, every single little element as I was going through it. And what ended up happening is as I started to do this and as I started to get more involved with entrepreneurship, get more involved with self-help, get more involved with, financial freedom. Of course, one of the most cliche books I did read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was in this position where I started to recognize like school was just really not for me. I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do. So I still decided, continue with school, but I recognized the only reason why I was continuing with school was because that's what other people expected me to do. It's not entirely what I wanted to do for myself. And I had a very, very hard conversation between myself and my parents, of course, and that was deciding to drop out of school. At the end of the day was the biggest and hardest decision I had. And I remember I had this conversation with them, and I remember I said that like, if I don't do this because of their opinions of what I'm looking to do, then that's gonna more oftentimes to lead to having resentment towards them. Because I'm gonna tell myself, I didn't do this because you guys wanted me to do it. And I didn't want that to be any sort of situation. And as I was going back and forth, and it wasn't like an immediate thing. It was a conversation that was had over certain durations of months. I was starting my Amazon business. And as I was starting my Amazon business, my parents started to realize like, wow, like, he's actually working really hard. He's staying late up at night. And they started asking me these questions like, oh, what are you working on? Like, why are you working so hard and whatnot? And I remember I told them I'm working on a school project because I needed to get this done. It's the end of the school assignment and whatnot. And it was actually my Amazon business, right? It's because I didn't want to tell anybody. And I saw this reel from Steve Harvey that said like the best way to kill a big dream is to tell it to a small mind, right? And it's not to say that I was surrounded by small-minded people by any means necessary, but I knew just to a certain extent, people wouldn't entirely understand what I was doing. Now, thankfully enough, you know, my girlfriend at the time and now my fiance at this moment, she was supportive of me every single step of the way. And she was the one really pushing me to, you know, go towards and go full force in regards to what I wanted to do. So one day I decided, you know, me and my girlfriend, or now fiance at that time, we decided to approach my parents and be in a position where we were going to present to them my first $10,000 month. And I remember that I was in my living room, and I connected my laptop to my computer and whatnot, and I demonstrated to them and I explained to them in full exactly what I did and what I was doing, and the whole Amazon selling process and selling everyday products. And they were insanely proud of me. You know, they were very, very supportive of the process. And that ultimately reinforced my decision at that moment to decide, you know what? I'm dropping out of school. It's no longer something I want to be able to do. I've given myself the confidence in knowing I can do what I want to do if I simply put my mind to it. Therefore, I made the decision to end up dropping out of school. Now, yes, it was frowned upon. Yes, there were a lot of conversations around it because this whole online business was, generally speaking, a new thing, but I knew wholeheartedly this is what I wanted to do more than anything else. And if I were to fail at it, that's okay, that's on me. But I can't let someone else's decisions or someone else's opinions of me dictate the actions that I want to take. Now look, when you're a university dropout and you have bills to pay, no one in the world is hiring, and you're in this position where you started this new business and you've never started a business before, it's intense. You know, there is a lot of things that, you know, you start to feel, and there's a lot of pressure, but I believe that that's part of one of the reasons why I did so well in such a short period of time when I started my Amazon business, because I was under so much pressure. Right? And pressure leads to a lot of fear oftentimes, and fear more oftentimes than not leads to a lot of people just simply being stuck. And when people feel stuck, they oftentimes don't take any action on certain things. But for someone like myself, like, I knew that fear, I needed it to lead me to something far greater than anything I could have ever imagined. So starting with no safety net, starting with no idea in regards to how the fuck it was going to actually work out, was very, very scary at the end of the day, but I knew that it was something that I needed to do because there was no way, shape, and form that I wanted to stay in that position. Yes, was it a risky decision to drop out of school? It was. If I continued school, I get a job, I climbed the corporate ladder, like everything was perfectly mapped out. I knew exactly how it was going to go, but I knew in my head that it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So starting a business for me was risky, but there was nothing riskier, in my honest opinion, than letting other people dictate how much money I can make, dictate how I live my life, dictate whether or not I'm going to have a job. That is the riskiest thing I believe anybody could ever do. Hence why I decided to start my Amazon business and go full force with it. So as I went through the process, you know, I started my Amazon business and whatnot. Even before I presented my first $10,000 sales to my parents, I remember my first sale, and I'll throw a screenshot here in the screen, was like a Swell bottle cleaner. And I remember I was in my girlfriend's parents' living room at the time, and the moment that I heard that cha-ching happen, because when you're in Amazon selling, you have your notifications on, it kind of gives you like a cha-ching notification, and that flipped a switch to me. That's when I realized, like, oh shit, this is all real, this is actually happening, and it's working to a certain extent. And that really ignited something in me, like, hey, it's all systems go, all gas, simply no brakes. I did 10K in my first month. I ended up doing $50,000 in sales in my first 3 months, and within 7 months, I actually crossed over $100,000 in sales for my own Amazon business. So I definitely sped up really quickly, but it was because, again, I was under a lot of pressure. Now, as I was going through that first 100K, I went through a lot of speed bumps. You know, when people asked for refunds for items, when A to Z claims were to come about, like, I was like, okay, like, this is not worth it. This is a lot of pressure. Like, why are these people returning these items? And I recognized, like, these are things and situations you have to go through in order for you to be able to live a better life. Like, people always have this ideology, and I used to have this ideology as well, like, when I make enough money, I'm gonna have no problems. When I'm gonna make all the money in the world, I'm gonna have no issues. That's totally wrong, and that's a false way of thinking, because even if you make all the money in the world, your problems are just going to keep on happening. They're just going to be different problems, right? Like, the problems I was having was, okay, well, you know, I'm trying to be able to figure out whether or not do I refund this person? Do I not refund this person? I was trying to figure out whether or not, you know, I can get the item to this person relatively quickly. Comparatively to one of my mentors, his current problem right now is, He had to go service one of his over $100,000 watches. That's a problem. Right? It's just a different type of problem at the end of the day. That's what it really comes down to. But as you grow and as you make more money, the problems are still going to be there. It's a cost you have to pay in order for you to play the game at the end of the day. So I always had these little things come about in regards to, oh, this hurts, or oh, this person left a negative feedback on my storefront. But truthfully, what ended up happening is I recognized the bigger picture. I recognized that there was more to it. This is a long-term investment. This is a long-term play. Like, I'm not in this just to make a quick buck or anything like that. I knew that Amazon was going to be around for a long duration of time. And here we are, 4.5 years later. I've made over $8 million in sales of my own Amazon business, and very happy that I've had that mentality of focusing on the long-term investment play with the Amazon store. Now, a lot of you might be thinking like, oh, like Shane, it's really easy for you to do that because like you don't have that many like responsibilities. You don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have all these other things. And just because I was young, it doesn't necessarily mean that the pressure wasn't actually real, right? The pressure was indeed real, but for any of you that you might be a little bit older, you might have kids, you might have a mortgage, you might have an actual job, a corporate 9-to-5 job. You might be in a position where like you have things that you need to pay for and more real pressure, I guess you can say. But what a lot of you need to realize is those specific things, those are not disadvantages by any means necessary. Those are advantages because it gives you an even deeper reasoning as to why you should do it, why you should go out there and start that business and take that leap of faith and bet on yourself and not only be solely reliant on your 9-to-5 to bring you in one source of income. Because at the end of the day, why someone does something is the number one indicator in regards to how well they do with that specific thing that they choose to actually pursue. I've helped now at this point over 700 people the last 4.5 years. The one reason as to why I have insanely successful people is because they have a strong, deep reasoning as to why they're doing it. Their kids, they want to have more time with their kids. They want to spend more time with their family, earn more money so that way they can live a better lifestyle for themselves. The why is the number one reason that's going to allow people to pursue and persist through the ups and the downs of any sort of venture, because you recognize that there's a bigger picture to all of this. So now fast forward to today, I'm in a wildly different position where I have an Amazon business running for myself that's producing consistent income for me day in and day out. I've now been engaged to my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time at that beginning moments. We've been together for 11 years now, but I've also had the pleasure of impacting over 700 people's lives as well. And the one most important thing in regards to how I feel and how my life is today comparatively to before, I just have more freedom of choice. I just have more freedom to choose what I want to do after my day. After I film this video, I'm gonna go to my favorite coffee shop. I'm gonna go get iced coffee and a little bit of a dessert. And it's midday, 1:15 p.m. just because I want to. Don't have to ask anybody. Don't have to think about whether or not I can afford to do it or whether or not I'm getting in trouble. Having freedom of choice is something a lot of people don't realize is so valuable, because when you get to choose how you want to do things, when you get to have more control over your life, your decisions, your income, that gives you the ability to feel most fulfilled, right? It's not about the money. It's not about making 10 grand or making 100 grand or making $1 million or anything like that. What it strictly comes down to at the end of the day is what that money can do, what the money can do for you, for your family, and how it can buy back more of your time. Money comes and goes, right? Obviously, the government has shown to us that money is basically infinite in today's day and age, but the one thing you can never get back is time. So how can you buy back more of your time? What I've realized is I've been able to experience life and have great travel, have business class flights, spend tens of thousands of dollars on luxurious vacations, and have an amazing engagement to my fiance at this moment right now because of the risk and the bet that I took on myself 4.5 years ago. Had I not decided to do that, had I not decided to persist and see the bigger picture to all of this, I would be in a position where maybe I would be stuck in a cubicle working for someone else, hating my day-to-day life and feeling resentful towards other people because I listened to what they expected from me to do rather than just simply listening to what I wanted to do for myself. Now, by no means necessary do I feel like I've made it in life, right? I feel like a lot of people are searching for this moment where like, oh, they can just sit back, relax. But I most definitely feel happy. I most definitely feel fulfilled in regards to what I do, how I've been doing it over the last 4.5 years. And I honestly wish I would have told myself, that specific person who's working in a valet job, who was thinking about pursuing an Amazon business, that it's not risky, that it's not not as hard as you might think. And there's always these constant thoughts that you have before getting into any specific venture of like, well, what if it doesn't work out? That's what everybody always questions. That's what I question. Like, well, what if it doesn't actually work out? Like, then what, Shane? What are you going to do at that moment? But I continuously wished I asked myself as I gone through these years of like, what if it does work out? Like, what if it actually does do everything that you're anticipating it to do? And the likelihood and the pros of it actually working out outweigh any specific negative in regards to what if it doesn't work out. And what if it does work out allows people to be like, you know what, this is exactly what I'm aiming for. I'd rather give myself the try and see how it's going to work rather than just simply raise my hands and say, you know what, I'm not going to do it. So I'm not sharing this story just for the sake of making it sound easy, because by no means necessary was it easy. It was hard work. It was discipline. And the motivation wasn't always there, but I remained tried and true as to regards to why I was doing it. But it was always worth it at the end of the day. There were nights I almost quit. There were things I spent thousands of dollars on that didn't actually work out, and that money is long gone by now. But I always knew that it was a learning experience, whether it was something that didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to, or whether it's something that did indeed work out and I made a lot of money from it. But if I know I can go from a valet driver working to making barely any money at the end of the day to being in a position in regards to where I am right now, I know that anybody willing to start and willing to just put honest work towards building a better future for themselves, or maybe even for their family or for the future themselves, you can be able to do it too. And if you were anything like what I previously was like, where you didn't want to do the things that you were currently doing right now, you wanted something more, you wanted something better, you wanted more freedom, you wanted more control at the end of the day, just know that the longer you wait, the longer you're just delaying your goals and your dream life. And the more and more and more time you take to decide whether or not you should do it, there's already other people that have decided to do it and are miles ahead in comparison to when you first initially started thinking about it. So if you're curious in regards to the exact business model, the things that I pursued over the last 4.5 years to get to the position that I'm in right now, I created a 10-minute video that explains every single little detail step by step on how you can be able to understand the whole entire process. Just click the video on the screen to watch that video. I hope you enjoyed my story. I hope you got some value from it. And just remember, what you're not changing, you're ultimately choosing at the end of the day, guys. So I'll see you in the next one.